shore will come back, and it will come back stronger than ever.
Goosebumps will actually come up on your body to think that it's coming back.
Now, Sandy, the long road home. A special report, 6 months after the superstorm's devastation.
It was a day we'll never forget. Monday, October 29th, 2012, Superstorm Sandy powered ashore our area's never seen anything like it.
And there will never be another Hurricane Sandy. The National Weather Service retired the name because of all the death and destruction the storm left behind.
People living in Breezy Point, Queens know all too well the devastation brought on by Sandy, the seaside community ravaged by floods.
But to make things worse, more than 100 homes were destroyed by fires that broke out at the height of the storm. And now 6 months later, Linda Schmidt returns to find people struggling to rebuild.
Before Sandy, there were 125 homes standing in this area. They all burned to the ground. Now, most of the people who live here will be rebuilding. Others simply cannot afford it. And then there is the issue of whether or not you're totally having to rebuild or if your home was damaged and you're making renovations. There are new federal requirements, new regulations, and those continue to develop. And many folks who live out here say those regulations are too expensive, and they're afraid they will eventually turn this area into a ghost town.
These are now the sights and sounds in Breezy Point, Queens, as this community tears down homes destroyed by Sandy and continues the slow process of rebuilding. Contractor signs are everywhere, but not everyone is rebuilding. And those who are afraid that new building requirements from FEMA could eventually force them out of their homes.
We don't know what we're going to do, so everyone's just kind of sitting back and waiting right now to see if there's any answers that we can get.
The first floor of Kelly Morgan's home was gutted. Her deck was also destroyed. At issue here is elevating these homes. FEMA hasn't finalized its new regulations yet, but has already announced that homes in many communities like Breezy Point will have to be raised. Kelly is a stay-at-home mom of 2 young children, and her husband is a city firefighter.
The latest I heard is $100,000 to raise your home.
And where do you get that money? I mean, how would you afford it?
I have no idea. Either that or we pay $10,000 a year for flood insurance, which is another thing you can't afford.
Government is going to destroy this community, what's left of it, that Sandy didn't destroy.
Jonathan Gasca is the district manager for Community Board 14. He says if the proposed FEMA rebuilding regulations become permanent, it will be a financial disaster.
If you're in a velocity zone and you raise your house to the recommended level, your insurance will be anywhere from $12,000 to $15,000. If you're in the velocity zone and you don't raise your house, we've heard anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 a year.
And Breezy Point is a working class community. A lot of firefighters and police officers live here.
There are people who just are going to walk away because they can't afford it. They're just going to leave the house. They're going to foreclose.
Volunteer Fire Chief Marty Ingram's home had to be gutted. He and his wife renovated, and they are contemplating whether they should raise their home.
We want to make the right decision. The worst case scenario is you raise it, say 3 feet, and then find out that the real elevation is 5 feet, so now you have to do it twice.
So the community is urging city, state, and federal politicians to convince the government to build barriers such as levees, dunes, seawalls, and jetties to protect their communities from floods. What they're hoping is that if the barriers are built, FEMA might not force them to raise their homes.
It's just a waiting game.
In Breezy Point, I'm Linda Schmidt.
Sandy also left a trail of destruction along the Jersey Shore. Seaside Heights, just one of the towns left in ruins. Dan Bowens was there when the worst of Sandy hit, and he recently returned to see how the recovery is coming along.
It was the day after. The skies were still dark and the damage was becoming clear. Hurricane Sandy had left its mark up and down the East Coast, particularly here in the Jersey Shore. I took that picture along the boardwalk here in Seaside Heights, looking out on the ocean, that shocking image of the roller coaster in the Atlantic. We wanted to retrace our steps nearly 6 months later. We found that while much of the debris has been removed, the rebuilding process is still very much in the early stages. From the way things were, battered and beaten, to how they are now, challenging yet hopeful. Repairs in Seaside Heights, very much an everyday struggle some 6 months later when we revisited the motel where we rode out the storm. 3 floors up, this is what we saw that chilly October morning, the popular summer destination swallowed beneath Sandy's surge.
We were in a turmoil and we had a very hard time that day.
Benjamin Neek is the owner of the Belmont Motel. He was lucky his business was mostly spared, while countless others here were damaged or destroyed.
We didn't know what was there in future for us, so we had to wait and see what happened.
It's dangerous. We know conditions are going to get worse. Our crew was stranded here for 3 days. Roads were impassable and power was out. Limited resources meant we ate soup warmed atop car engines while documenting rescue efforts to save people trapped inside submerged homes. It was mid-afternoon, October 29th, when Sandy made landfall, bringing with it a wave of devastation unlike anything the tri-state area has experienced in recorded history.
When you take the time to look back at what it was and where you came from, it kind of puts you back on your heels a little bit.
Every little bit this community, like much of our region, is building back, says Mayor Bill Akers.
You're one of the guys that was here, so you get it. You saw it at the worst of times. Now you're going to start seeing some of the better times.
This was the worst. I took a picture of the boardwalk shredded and splintered. This is now the same spot, a football field stretch facing north, pieced back together.
Goosebumps will actually come up on your body to think that it's coming back.
Challenges remain, though. The bungee ride that hung twisted and helpless when I photographed it today is untangled and removed. But like a majority of the attractions here, it is not close to being back to its old form.
These contractors have worked, they're working weekends, they're working late into the night.
Working to remove that roller coaster from the Atlantic, hoping to make things suitable for tourists to return. Promising, the mayor says, to frame this hard-hit community into a picture of recovery.
A lot of hard work by a lot of really good people that have got us to this point.
Reporting from Seaside Heights, I'm Dan Bowens.
There's much more still ahead on our special report, Sandy, the long road home.
Including a look back at Long Beach, New York, where the rebuilding is slow and frustrations growing.
Also, the New Jersey town where people were pulled from their homes by rescue boats. Why they say they're being forgotten because they don't live along the shore. The South Shore of Long Island was battered by Sandy. The storm had an overwhelming impact on waterfront communities like Lindenhurst, Freeport, and Island Park.
That's right. Already prone to flooding, Sandy was a game changer for these areas. Now people must struggle with the cost of making their homes hurricane-proof in the future.
It's the same situation in the beachfront city of Long Beach. Sandy destroyed the beloved boardwalk and hundreds of homes.
Teresa Priolo visited Long Beach and found the community spirit strong despite the struggles.
On October 29th, I join you from this very hotel, preparing to meet Sandy. Well, I can tell you, Sandy is here, and we are not allowed to be outside because of the storm. At the time, Long Beach was underwater, and residents feared how this would end. Now, 6 months later, this city remains battered, but not broken.
You see it in Katrina. You don't think that's going to happen to you.
Judy McBride is a woman full of life. You'd never suspect she's battled cancer twice and was widowed over a decade ago, a life punctuated with heartbreak. But she says it was Superstorm Sandy that almost broke her.
This is my town, it's my paradise. And not to have that and to see all the devastation was scary.
McBride's salon, the station for hair, had over 5 feet of water. It was unprotected from Mother Nature's wrath.
I put sandbags out. I don't even know why I put sandbags out, just because everybody else was doing it. That was the only reason.
Like many businesses on the city's West End, the salon required a gut renovation. But she's back 6 months later. Her reopening, the result of a good insurance policy. Across the street at Paninis and Bikinis, a very different story. In fact, you could say these two businesses represent the ongoing struggle here in Long Beach. Those who are moving on and those who can't.
I'm fighting for my life personally.
Justin Schatzberg spent all his money expanding the place 3 months before Sandy hit. He doesn't own the building. His home is badly damaged. He's receiving little to no assistance, and the worst part, the signs may read, "Until everyone comes home," but it looks like folks have given up.
I think a lot of people aren't coming back because they can't deal with that emotional process. That's stage 5, they say.
That's a huge part of the problem. Even if the city rebuilds, where are the people to keep the local economy alive? Some say the answer lies at the water's edge.
We're just waiting for the boardwalk. Once the boardwalk goes up, then we'll have our Long Beach back.
And about the boardwalk, the city is intent on rebuilding, but it won't be cheap. City manager Jack Schneerman says the boardwalk will be made of a hurricane-strength tropical wood. It'll cost $44 million, and it won't be done until the fall. Still, it's an important part of the healing here. Also on the agenda, the Bay. The Army Corps of Engineers is studying it and considering anti-flood technology. Long Beach is hoping to upgrade its sewer system and elevate its generators, which will help maintain plumbing and power during the next big storm. And cell service is expected to improve when mobile cell towers are brought in to ensure better signals. But the smallest change that may yield the biggest results, implementing block captains to disseminate information. All these lessons learned, and still.
Physically, the city's very vulnerable. And so until those long-term solutions in place, we will continue to be vulnerable going forward.
City, state, and federal officials continue to meet periodically to discuss ways to bring Long Beach back. Reporting in Long Beach, Teresa Priolo.
In the meantime, one New Jersey town is pleading, don't forget about us. Moonachie was flooded when a local berm was breached after the storm. But as they try to get back to normal, they feel that they're really not getting the help that they actually deserve. Matt Alvarez explains why.
That was a night I'll never forget.
It was the night when the powerful surge of Superstorm Sandy tore through 6 berms along the Hackensack River and devastated the small town of Moonachie.
It poured water in here. Within 1 hour, everybody was underwater in here.
And before people knew what was happening, Moonachie and its 2,700 residents were in trouble. Big trouble.
Let the children and the elderly go first.
We ran into this man during our live broadcast.
Sir, what's your first name?
Joe.
Joe. What's your dog's name?
Sadie.
And what do you think about all this, man?
This is crazy. Never seen anything like this. Hope I never have to see it again.
This elderly woman waited patiently for a ride to a shelter, keeping warm with a coat our TV crew gave her.
Never in 47 years did I encounter anything like this.
80% of the town was hurt by Sandy, including more than half the businesses.
But now, 6 months later, a lot has been done here in Moonachie. The berms have been repaired, small businesses have reopened, a number of houses have been restored.
Tom Cassio's home is on its way to being fully repaired.
I'm here 50 years. The first time in 50 years that we got something like this.
And just like the people along the Jersey Shore, those in Moonachie have been reaching out for help.
It's a slow process because they're using their own money.
And, says the mayor, a lot of people in Moonachie believe they have been forgotten by Trenton and Washington.
I see a lot of things being done. I see the dunes being built down the shore. I see the boardwalks being built. There really hasn't been anything up here yet.
So business owners like Joseph Bazzarelli, whose Italian restaurant was devastated by Sandy, did not wait for help. Only 9 weeks after Sandy, he was back in business.
This looks much better than about 2 months ago. Back to business. My guys all here. My family's here. Nobody is hurt. God bless.
But despite all their hard work, people in this small town have a message for Trenton.
Please don't forget about us.
In Moonachie, New Jersey, I'm Matt Alvarez.
Coming up, trapped in rising floodwaters. It was a night that no one saw coming, and now they will never forget.
We return to Howard Beach, where dozens of people rode out the storm trapped in a seaside motel. The South Shore of Queens was stunned by Sandy's storm surge. It was worse than anyone could have imagined.
Reporter Joel Waldman covered the storm from Howard Beach and was one of the several people trapped in a hotel by Sandy's floodwaters.
All right, he returned recently to see the area's recovery.
Whoa. With transformers blowing all around us, live wires electrifying the swollen floodwaters, Jamaica Bay's waves rippling over Cross Bay Boulevard, and car alarms momentarily piercing through the whistling winds, one thing slipped our minds at Howard Beach's Surfside Motel once Sandy had finally passed by us.
You know what? I never returned my room key, room 32. Guess it's never too late. Let's give it a shot.
6 months later, we were back, and we were happy to see so was the Surfside Motel, looking better than before the superstorm.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, Fox 5. Listen, I never returned the room key.
Okay.
I'm bringing it back. I know it's about 6 months late, but how's it going?
Okay.
Good to see you,
man. We're getting there.
Yeah, you getting there?
Slowly, but we're getting there.
Getting there, and in a big way. Check out these nifty, newly decorated rooms.
At one point, the water was coming in so much that it lifted these tubs right off the mountain.
That's amazing.
And these tubs were actually floating in the room.
Working virtually around the clock since October, floors were transformed from carpet to epoxy, walls from plaster to stone, a little more waterproof, just in case the Surfside gets blindsided again. First it was Irene, then Sandy.
We're hoping there's not a third one. The way they're talking about hurricane season, they're saying it's going to be a rough one this year, but I don't want to go through it again. We don't want to go through it again. It was really tough.
We don't either. We like your hotel, but we don't want to go through it either.
I understand.
Reconstruction cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Managers say with virtually no help from FEMA or anyone else in the federal government.
We're still waiting.
The SBA has been a difficult process. It seems like every time you go to the SBA asking for something, they want 15 more things.
So the night of Sandy, we were actually staying in this room right here, and the water was all the way up, practically to the balcony.
And here's the video to prove it. This close to being flooded out of Surfside's second floor with nowhere else to go.
The water just kept on coming and coming. I mean, you were here, you've seen it, it just never stopped.
And just like that, it started to recede. The 50 guests trapped inside breathed a collective sigh of relief, whisked away to safe shelter.
We're ready for the summer. Come back to the Rockaways, come back through Howard Beach. We're a resilient town, we're ready to do it again.
Surfside turned upside down for a time, now back right side up. Reporting from Howard Beach, I'm Joel Waldman.
Coming up, the big question, to build or not rebuild.
That is the burning question facing homeowners in one New Jersey shore community.
Find out why some say it is worth the cost.
The barrier island of Mantoloking along the Jersey Shore was one of the towns that got hit with the brunt of Sandy.
Dozens of homes washed away. Some of the ones left standing may have to be demolished anyway.
Sharon Crowley talked to some homeowners about what they will do next.
This has been absolutely overwhelming.
I mean, this is scary what happened in our town.
This was a major, catastrophic event and something that we really weren't prepared for.
Did Mantoloking learn any lessons from Sandy?
Yeah, we've learned a ton. One is when there's an evacuation order, you take them seriously.
Months after Superstorm Sandy ripped apart these oceanfront homes in Mantoloking, New Jersey, the beach is still closed and still too dangerous to walk on. We toured it using an all-terrain vehicle.
The Department of Health from the state has to certify that the beach is okay to be open.
The barrier island, 2 miles long, sits between the Atlantic Ocean and Barnegat Bay. More than 50 homes here were literally swallowed up by the superstorm. At least 150 more are scheduled to be demolished.
The miracle of this whole thing is that not one person died.
Mantoloking, New Jersey resident Chris Nelson got 2 feet of water in his home. When Sandy hit, literally 50 homes just like this one were pushed right into the sea. Part of the problem was the ocean waves came right over the street, right over 35, and then met up with the bay.
When it came all the way across, it came across fast.
One of the homes here lifted right off its foundation and now still sits in the middle of the bay like a houseboat.
We've lived in 7 different places since October.
Priscilla Hibby has lived in Mantoloking 21 years. The inside of her home had to be gutted because of flooding. She too wants to rebuild, but she can't say the same about all of her neighbors.
I guess we all have the question is, what is our town going to be like when it finally does come to repopulation?
Everyone in the small borough of about 500 homeowners has to agree to allow the Army Corps of Engineers to begin rebuilding the dunes. Not everybody has yet. Some are hesitant since many of these are multi-million-dollar mansions. Accepting federal help means allowing public access to the beach in front of these private oceanfront homes.
We're looking at these geotechs, type of a tube,
Chris Niebling is with the Office of Emergency Management. He's confident he will convince any holdouts.
The dunes this time, when the project is completed, will be much higher and much wider.
Bulldozers are now working daily to build up the dunes wiped out by Sandy. Though the summer beach vacation season of 2013 here in Mantoloking is uncertain.
It depends on how fast, the state and the government can all come together on this.
There is also concern here about what will happen if the dunes are not rebuilt before the next storm or nor'easter comes ashore.
We're unprotected right now. I mean, the bulldozers are up on the beach as we speak, pushing sand as best we can every day at low tide. But it's a Band-Aid situation until the dunes truly get rebuilt.
What is certain, Sandy has brought this small community of mainly summer residents closer together.
We learned how important community is during this storm.
It's a unique community and a wonderful community. It's a big question mark for all of us as to what's going to happen in the future.
In Mantoloking, I'm Sharon Crowley.
And that is our special report, Sandy, the long road home. I'm Harry Martin.
And I'm Steve Lacey. Be sure to tune in next Friday night for part 2. We look ahead to the cost of rebuilding and the lessons learned in the aftermath of the storm.
Have a good night.